Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the R&R Podcast with the most disappointing comeback since Michael Jordan joined the Washington Wizards. I'm your host, Robert Jones, along with my co-host, Randy Watkins.
Hooah!
Who's apparently Al Pacino tonight.
Hooah!
In Scent of a Woman. Well, better that than Randy Macho Man Savage.
Ooh, yeah.
My, excuse me if I cough tonight. I still have not recovered from the Macho Man's thrashing of my vocal cords. So he is still putting the hurt on him years after from the grave.
Maybe you should wash it down with some delicious Slim Jims.
Oh, God. You know, actually, since my Lentinal Covenant is over, I could wash it down with some Slim Jims.
Oh, meat snacks are on, baby.
Oh, man.
Meat 24/7.
I haven't had this much meat since college.
For breakfast, I ate bacon with a side of sausage with a slice of ham and a T-bone steak.
And if you could puree that in a blender with a lot of butter, that'd be great. All right. How about we get into some news? There's lots of news to cover, and I want us to officially end this episode before the tournament starts tonight so that we can actually say we made predictions before the game started.
Yeah. Awesome. Some of the biggest NFL news this week was the new catch rule. What'd you think about it?
So explain to me a little bit. What exactly are the rules now?
So it's a 3-step process now. So there are the first step is that I'm just pulling it up here to refresh my memory. I was looking at it earlier last week. It's obviously making the catch, I think, is step 1, and then making a football move is step 2. Step 3 is why did I not have this pulled up?
It has to do with the step 2 supersedes whether he actually controlled the ball all the way to the ground, as long as he made a football move.
That's right. They've taken out the ambiguity of controlling the football throughout the catch. So it's now basically, did they catch it? Did he make a football move? And, maintain, they've taken out the ground rule, if you will.
Right. Well, and what's so funny here with the new rule, too, is that it's supposedly more subjective, but the new question that it brings into play is, what the hell is a football move? That's an entirely subjective call.
Yes.
I stood on a field. Well, that's a football move. So basically, it's all down to a judgment call now, and there's no real way to debate it. In fact, I think I saw that there can be an ejection if you continue to argue with referees, which will be interesting to see how much that comes up. But, I honestly, let's face it, they supposedly had already instated these new rules in the playoffs. Now, what do you think about that? What do you think about the idea of these new rules being applied in the playoffs without it being broadcast to the entire league, to the press, to the fans?
Well, that can't be true because we had that issue in the Super Bowl that, when it was reviewed heavily on the Eagles. So I don't see how that was possible.
Well, the NFL's official statement is that these new rules were tested in the playoffs, and it's like, this is your time. This is when you're going to test it, is the playoffs. And as a fan, think about how confusing that is for fans. So you've been watching all season. You've actually been paying attention. Let's just say this was your first season, and you've actually been paying attention to the new rules. And then you notice some differences in the playoffs. Now, I guess they mask it by, supposedly they always let the players play a little harder in the playoffs. That's certainly the rule of thumb in the NBA, right? They allow more contact, they allow more pushing, but it was an interesting move for the NFL to say, well, actually, you've already seen these rules in effect.
We just slid them in on you.
Why would you add that?
That's got Roger Goodell written all over it.
Yeah, geez. Well, and here's the deal, too. I have a feeling, I'm sure the teams, because they get notified by the league all the time, I'm positive that the teams were notified, hey, listen, this is how things are going to be called. If they weren't, that is a much bigger problem on their hands.
Yeah, so the NFL, I was just reading the language here. The language reads, a receiver must control the ball establish himself in bounds and perform a football move such as taking a third step or lunging with the ball in hand. So you still have the ambiguity of a football move in there. You're right, but they have exactly what we talked about on this podcast. They have simplified it. Thank God. So I think it'll serve the NFL and the fans much better this year, this upcoming year, and it'll be a benefit to everyone. Especially the casual fan that we've talked about a lot, that you've referenced on this podcast. The casual fan, where you don't have to go into an algorithm of whether this was a catch or not.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what, there's a reason why other sports are gaining in popularity. Now, it's tough watching basketball, and I quote them because they're the only league with ratings increases. Well, technically, baseball has had a ratings increase too, and some of that has to do with pace of play. But with the NBA, it's really easy to understand what's a foul for the most part. I know there's exceptions about, well, why was that a foul? He was just standing there. But for the most part, guy goes up for a shot, his hands get slapped. It's pretty obvious. Okay, that's a foul.
The shot, right?
Exactly. There's not a lot of chippy plays. Now, the one thing I will say across the board in the NBA that they have got to find a way to fix is the last minute of every game. Every fan hates it because it is no longer basketball. It becomes a stupid timeout chess match.
Yeah.
And I understand that there are some coaches who are really good at it, and there's some people who love that. But it makes for boring basketball. It really does.
Yeah, it does. College basketball is notorious for it too. Putting everyone on the free throw line in the last minute, and all these timeouts now all of a sudden.
Well, it looks like we've also got another new rule to the NFL. We have a new helmet rule, and I want to read this verbatim so I don't mess it up. Let's see here. It is a 15-yard foul if a player lowers his head to initiate and make contact with his helmet against an opponent.
That's the biggest bullshit rule I've ever heard. Like when I was reading this, a coworker was telling me about it, and he said, did you see the new helmet rule come out? And I said, no, I got to look this up. And I read this, and all I could think about was how much bullshit this is. If you're a running back and you've been playing the game all your life, and you're running head on with a 6'6" linebacker who's 270, 280 pounds coming to bowl you over, are you going to run at him with your head facing the sky?
No. That's how you see stars, man. That's how you go bye-bye.
That's right. That's how someone knocks your head off.
Randy, what is a QB sneak? But put your head down and dive forward a yard.
Yeah.
Again, it's going to come down to subjective calls.
Mm-hmm. And not even QBs and running backs. Think about when a wide receiver catches an out route and makes that turn. I mean, they inevitably always put their head down if a guy is right there. They're not going head up. I mean, I don't think they'll be able to call this with any sort of consistency. I think this is a rule that's thrown out there as a starting point. With the whole, is it CTE, right? CTE awareness and the concussion backlash. I think this is so the NFL can say that they've done this. But I just don't see how they can. It's at that point, it's not football. And I think even Josh Norman said that. He said in this article, he said, talking about, I don't know how you're going to play the game. What about diving tackles? What about exactly what you said, quarterbacks leaning in on sneaks? I mean,
and I'll tell you what, man, I love defense. I love watching guys getting their clock cleaned. Not in a bad way, but we've all been there. You see a little guy who gets out in the lane and he gets laid out, or heaven forbid, a player that you really don't like, a showboat, and you see him get drilled into the ground. Hard tackles have always been a part of the game, but we have in the last 10 years completely neutered the defense. And I would actually say that offensive injuries are up higher than they've ever been before. Mm-hmm. Like I said last year, there was an epidemic of quarterbacks going out when supposedly we've put all these rules in place to protect them.
Mm-hmm. And all these knee injuries too. Not to mention that. But the subsection B of this rule was also kind of like the college rule, which was helmet to helmet contact could warrant an ejection. Did you see that?
Yeah. I don't know, man. The NFL's got a big problem on their hands, and there's a few things we're going to touch on later in this discussion that I don't want to spoil now. But this is just one more example. It's like one step forward and two steps back. It's like, okay, we've simplified the catch rule, but we're going to basically make it so guys can't touch each other. And they wonder why this last Super Bowl was the highest scoring Super Bowl ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's making it an offensive game. And for people that like defense and love defense like ourselves, it makes it unbearable to watch at times because there's so many penalties on the defensive side of the ball. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what, to be a great defense, it takes being a smarter chess player than the offense. With the offense, you know what you're going to do. The defense's whole game is figuring out what the offense is doing. I mean, and that's why I admire great defenses, because it is all planning and reaction. It takes a really smart person to become a defensive coordinator. And especially a defensive captain to be able to have the vision on the field to see what play is about to be executed.
And there's so many less of an amount, if you will, of defensive plays compared to offensive plays that, the anticipation is the biggest part of. Yeah, you're exactly right. What's the next move? Run or pass?
Yeah. All right, let's move on to a couple more stories here.
So we were talking about Ndamukong Suh finding a new home that finally happened this week, and it was to the LA Rams, which you are a big fan of. What did you think about the move?
Oh God. I told you, like he's just. I feel like he's just he's getting up there in age. I don't know, man. I just feel like he's bad news for teams, and it hurts me because like so let's say he shows up and he plays the way he's supposed to do, and he actually puts pressure on the quarterback. The Rams defense is already great. This will make them even better if he performs. But if he doesn't perform and he causes drama and a bunch of attention, you got to remember they're in LA now. So like, does this really make his brand better? Like a lot of players talk about going to LA like being good for their brand. If LeBron ever goes to the Lakers, it will absolutely be for his brand. Right. It'll be to sell more shoes, to be in more movies, to be on a historic team. Because let's face it, he has right now never been on a historic team. The Cleveland Cavaliers are not a historic team. The Miami Heat are not a historic team. They were an expansion team. Right. So I don't know. What are your feelings about going to the Rams?
Well, I like that it was a what you call prove it deal. So it was a 1-year deal. So they came in. They can, if it doesn't work out, they can quickly end the experiment. But to bring him in beside of Aaron Donald, like two of the best defensive tackles in the league, like dude, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. As soon as I saw that, I said, "Oh my God, they're pairing him up with Aaron Donald, who's been a Pro Bowler year after year and a absolute stud." I think it's exciting seeing the two of them. I think Aaron's a much bigger star than Suh is now, especially as he's gotten older.
Yeah,
but
maybe he can be a mentor to him. We'll see. Yeah, hopefully on the field and not off.
Let me tell you what not to do in the NFL. Don't stomp on people's faces.
Or you got to do it in the pile. I'll tell you what, the Rams are stacking themselves across the board with defense.
Yeah, they were making a lot of off-season moves this year.
Well, they realize there's going to be a power vacuum in the NFC. And the Rams were in good position last year, so if they can play well again this year, I don't see any reason why they can't make it to the NFC Championship game. They have the talent to do it. There's no reason why they can't, Randy. And actually, as a Panthers fan, it's one of the things that scares me because, like, I hate to say scares me, but like it hurts our chances because more power in the NFC makes it harder for us to get to the top. You know,
Yeah,
the Panthers kind of benefited a couple years ago from. I mean, we beat good teams, but we were beating good teams who were on the decline. Like the year we go to the Super Bowl is the year that we finally could best the Seattle Seahawks. You know, we could beat them regularly. We beat them in the regular season. We beat them in the postseason.
right.
That was the hurdle we had to get over to get to the Super Bowl. And so it'll be interesting to see. I don't have a problem if the Rams are going to be great. I think it'd be good for the team, and quite frankly, the NFL would love to have an LA team win the Super Bowl. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a storyline right there, right?
The question is, the Rams were in LA once before, so there actually are, if you can believe it, shockingly enough, there are Rams fans in LA. The question is, will they come back? Because LA is a city of transplants, and that's the problem, is that everybody is from somewhere else. It's kind of what we see here in North Carolina. Not only is everybody from somewhere else, but our NFL team was started in the mid-90s. So people my age and even older, are not Panthers fans. They have a team that they pull for otherwise. Now, people younger than me are more likely to be Panthers fans. You know, they grew up with that being the Carolina team.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Think about our peers. Think about people in our age group. How many actual Panthers fans do you know?
I definitely, guys that are my age and older, I agree that because the Panthers weren't there.
Right.
I guess as your most impressionable years, not until the 90s, but I would say definitely people your age and younger, I've seen a lot more Panthers fans.
Yeah. So just food for thought. It'll be interesting to see if they come back for the Rams, because I feel like I still call them the San Diego Chargers because their attendance last year was just crap. It was sad, Randy. It's sad.
Yeah.
And I've got a soft spot in my heart for Phillip Rivers because, great quarterback who has just never had a great team around him there.
They've never built a team.
He posts these crazy numbers, and you're like, wow, that's really impressive. Too bad it'll never amount to anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he's always had a decent running back. It's just they've never had a defense. They just refuse to build a defense around that guy. They get him Keenan Allen, who's a pretty good wide receiver, but they just will not build a defense to stop anybody. So they just, even if they put up 30 points a game, the defense loses
Coughs it up.
40 points. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's one of the reasons why he's always had such great stats. I mean, let's face it. Peyton Manning has inflated stats because they had no defense. Now, he really was an offensive genius, but he had to score. The only way they could win was scoring 50 points in a game.
Yeah. Indy has never had a defense. I agree with you. I think that the Rams will make it back to the NFC Championship. I think they could be Super Bowl bound. I mean, they were putting up 30, 40 points a game all year long last year. That offense was high scoring.
Yeah.
And now that they've kind of shored up the defense with adding Marcus Peters and your boy Aqib Talib. So Bill Plaschke has called them.
Man, we roll deep.
Bill Plaschke has called them the Legion of Goon.
Oh, Jesus.
I thought that was hilarious.
That's pretty accurate. All right, we got to move on. How about OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. on the trade block?
Yeah,
there is not a player that David Gettleman has found that he's not willing to trade.
I just think that was part of his resume, like when he's interviewing with the Giants and John Mara, and he's just like, all right, you're a star wide receiver. I've got big plans for him. He's going to go places. He's going to go outside of New York. I'm getting rid of his ass, baby, as soon as we get in. No,
it's like he shows up and he's like, all right, who's our best players? All right, cool. They're gone. All right, who's our oldest players? We're going to give them 10-year contracts.
Eli Manning, let's bench him, then bring him back the next game.
Oh, my God.
But this is all unfolded since that video we talked about on one of our episodes of him being in Europe with the powdery white substance that was not flour. And it has all stemmed from that. It was powdered sugar for his crepes.
Actually, it was an antifungal medication.
Talcum powder.
Yeah. Genital warts treatment.
Adam Schefter's been talking about it all week, saying it's very possible. The reporters have straight up asked Gettleman and John Mara. They're not denying it. Gettleman's response when he was questioned about it this week was, he's on the team right now. So there were, speaking of the Rams, there were rumors out there that the Rams were going hard after him.
I'm going to say it, man. So the Rams, talk about gambles. They're picking up players who are gambles. Aqib Talib and Ndamukong Suh, and if they pick up Odell Beckham Jr., so you have it's the gamblers. Bet, essentially. You have these players who could be amazing. They could be fantastic. If Odell Beckham Jr. goes to the Rams and performs, there's no reason why they don't make it to Super Bowl, right? The only problem is, if they all get in trouble, if they don't perform on the field, if this or that, I feel like those three players are like 50-50.
Right.
Could be great, could have some serious problems on the field.
Hey, it worked for the Ravens.
I get you, man. Yeah, that team was always held together with duct tape and handcuffs.
Scandal after scandal.
Now it's the Cleveland Browns, man. They're full of criminals.
They are. Well, the running joke used to be the Cowboys too, on how many criminals they drafted and picked up in free agency.
Cowboys more like the Outlaws.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So. They've talked about him being on the trade block, but they've also been hearing out there 2 first rounders for him.
That's why the Redskins-Cowboys thing is so dumb. It's literally Cowboys and Indians, Randy. It's literally Cowboys and Indians. God dang it.
That's the beauty of the rivalry, okay?
Almost as if the rivalry was manufactured due to the proximity of the name.
Very well could be. It makes you wonder how a team, how many miles away, 1,000 miles away, is a rival with the Redskins.
Yeah. Don't get me started on the divisions. I will say at least the South Division, the NFC South and the NFC actually makes some sense. All those teams are actually in the South.
The South, right.
The NFC East is what?
Well, with the exception of Dallas, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't make sense.
Well, and you certainly couldn't put them in the North, and it doesn't make sense to put them in the West. So I get it. But it would almost make more sense for one of the NFC South teams to be in the NFC East and Dallas to be in the NFC South. Almost like you should trade the Panthers into the NFC East and then have Dallas. But see, that they never would do that because they love the Redskins-Cowboys rivalry.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's exactly right.
But if it was geographic, don't you agree that it would kind of be the Panthers that made more sense?
Yeah, it would make sense. Yeah, and it definitely does. And you see these rivalries are entangling in the NFC South too, with the Panthers and Saints going at it every year, and the Falcons too. So, and
if you think about the NFC South, it's kind of where they stuck all of their expansion teams.
Yeah.
Now, the Saints go way, way back, but at one point the Falcons were an expansion. At one point, the Bucks and the Panthers were an expansion team. So we literally kind of have a division of expansion teams.
It's turned out to be a great division, though, the last few years. I definitely have to give South credit.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. It's been great. I mean, the teams have been so competitive. It's kind of been like a who's who of who's going to rise to the top. I mean, as a fan, I hate it and love it. Well, even the Bucks have had their moments. I mean, they've been a mess last season, yeah, but they've been able to beat some good teams here and there.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, next story, Rando.
Well, I am curious before we move forward what you thought about 2 first-rounders for OBJ. You think that's ridiculous, or you think that's reasonable?
How many years has OBJ been in the league?
That's a good question.
A little while now.
I'm going to go ahead and tell
you. My gut call on it is just it's too much. Two first round picks. I mean, if they're in different years, maybe, but I don't know, man. And it'd have to be years apart. I don't. That's a big commitment.
Yeah, it is. I thought was my initial impression of it too. Let's see, he was a first round pick in 2014.
Okay, so he's only been in the league for 4 years. So
Right.
he's still young. He's still got some time. But I guess my whole thing is, if you'd asked me 2 months ago, I may have felt differently.
Yeah.
I may have felt differently and said, sure. But now there's a question.
Right. I mean, 2 picks for someone who is a flight risk. Yeah, it's arguably one of the best wide receivers in the league, for sure. I mean, right up there with the top talent. But, you have to just kind of – it's exactly what happened to T.O. in his career, and it was ultimately the demise of his career was he was a cancer in the locker room. At the time, he was just like OBJ, one of the top talents, but, could not keep his mouth shut, could not just do his job and keep his nose clean, and ultimately ended his career. Nobody wanted him anymore.
Yeah.
So our last piece of NFL news was Colin Kaepernick is still out of a job.
So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier about how the NFL has a couple of problems on their hands.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem that they refuse to acknowledge is ratings this last year were abysmal. They were down in all markets across the board, especially in the playoffs. And you threw together 2 Titans, and you should have had better ratings than they did. And the fact of the matter is that these kneelers who were taken away from the game were bad for business. Whether you support them, agree with them or not, they're bad for business. And so I'll be honest, I am not surprised that they're still out of a job. People keep trying to give Kaepernick more credit than he's due. His last couple of seasons were really rubbish. And they'll say, oh, there's a bunch of backups who are rubbish. But it's like, if somebody hasn't had a great last couple of seasons and he garners a lot of negative attention, in fact, that may be cancer. I mean, there's the potential for a team to pick him up and for there to literally be season ticket holders who are like, I'm done. You know what I mean? Right. And that's your bread and butter. And so I'll be honest, I personally, I'm not surprised that he's still out of a job. Could he play somewhere? Absolutely. He totally could play somewhere. But talk about a stink.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that they do have a big problem of acknowledging the ratings, the issues, the whole protest last year and what it's done for some of these players. Eric Reed being one of them, who was a really good safety on that team, was also a kneeler, and he has yet to find a job. The thing that we have to keep in mind is exactly what you just said, that Kaepernick did struggle. He's never completed more than really 60% of his passes. His career passing average is 59.8. He's always had wheels on him. That's kind of been the driving force behind his talent. But he is 30 years old now, so we know what happens to running quarterbacks at 30 years old. So I think a lot of people are shedding light on it that he's being shunned, and I think it's unfair to say because. First of all, he's been in the NFL. He was in the NFL for 6 seasons. And how many guys get drafted every year that never start even one game? They're on their practice squad their entire career, and their entire career being all of 2 years. I think we've talked about it before, but like what the average career in the NFL is less than 3 years. So I'm not surprised. I don't think he's going to find another job. If I were him, I'd start looking in the Arena Football League or Canadian Football League.
Yeah, he's got to put some distance between this. Now, I mean, I can understand that he's got a lawsuit. He's doing all sorts of things. But if you're trying to increase your brand, like, what's your other option? Nobody's hiring you. And so you've got to do everything you can to keep your name in the mix. So you're saying, well, they're not hiring me because of my political opinions. But, there are kneelers who are employed. There are people
they're not hiring you because you're a hypocrite, Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
You were raised by a white family, okay? You are not oppressed.
That hurts. He was also raised by a wealthy white family.
Wealthy white family, yes.
Yeah, they were well off, which doesn't help. But I think another thing that really hurt his brand too is his body, his tattoos. He was covered in a cross and all these Bible verses. He was raised by Christians, and then he gets a girlfriend who's a member of the Nation of Islam, and they're kind of already known as a radical sect. It's African American Islam in the United States. They've got some ideas that aren't traditionalism. We're not getting into a deep religious discussion, but if you were a big Christian who was a follower of his, even an African American Christian who followed him, and here he goes to this different sect and starts changing his language so much and starts more talking about African American supremacy and that sort of a thing, it's kind of a turnoff. Again, the thing I've always harped on with athletes, it's not that you shouldn't be allowed to have opinions. It's just that you need to understand that we watch you for sport, for entertainment. We watch you to hit people and to catch a ball. We don't really care what your opinions on society are. Well, I feel the same way about actors.
I was just going to say that. Actors and actresses, too. I mean, same thing.
Why should I give a crap about a high school dropout who has feelings about something? You know what I mean?
Feelings. When I think of that statement about Kaepernick and his girlfriend, I think of Jules Winfield saying, my girlfriend's a vegetarian, which pretty much makes me a vegetarian.
Hey, buddy, you are what you eat. You know what I'm saying? All right. You got to move on. Getting into some murky waters here. So how about that National Basketball Championship, Randy?
Yeah. So you got Villanova returning again and Michigan vying for their first title since the 80s for the national championship.
Michigan is 1-5 in national title games. They've only won it once, and they've lost it 5. Well, remember the whole Fab Five and losing to Duke.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see. So we got Nova and Michigan. Michigan beat out Loyola Chicago. The highest seed Michigan has played in this entire tournament was a 6th seed.
Wow. Yeah, they haven't played anybody. No. Great dig on that because they haven't played anybody. They are on a 14-0 streak, though. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but again, I just hate to say it, you kind of got to look at who they beat.
That's true.
And they barely got by Loyola. That shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
They scraped by Loyola, and yet Villanova blew out a great Kansas team. Blew them out. They were just draining threes on them all day. God. I thought that would be a more competitive game. I thought that would be a better matchup. 2 number ones against each other. I was wrong.
Right.
Whew.
I thought so too. I thought that would be a much better game. But you're right. It was not at all. That Kansas had no defense for Villanova's perimeter offense.
Well, and it's so funny. They had just gone from playing Duke and beating Duke, and Duke was so physical in the paint, and they neutralized Duke's inside guys.
Right.
And so it's like they couldn't shift back to a team that was heavy on the 3.
Mm-hmm.
I will say it's odd to have a Duke team that wasn't a live and die by the 3-pointer, because they weren't this year. That's traditionally what they've been.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
They were a very good team.
Completely different. And that's what you and I talked about when Duke and Carolina played, because Carolina's always had a post presence, and this year, they have a starter that's 6'8", nobody bigger than 6'8", and Duke was the dominant post players this year.
Let's look at it. This was the weakest defensive team at Duke in as long as I can remember, and that's saying something. They were doing essentially just a zone defense, and that's it. That's all they could do, just a 3-2.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised, because that's, people always talk about Duke in the 3, but Mike Krzyzewski's always based his teams on defense. You have to defend the ball. And this year, man, it just was not happening. None of those guys were good at it.
Mm-mm.
None of those guys could get back and really defend. For all their size, couldn't do it. And I guess it's because I get the feeling in the youth game that we're just not training guys to make a ton of contact under the basket. What do you think?
I think it lends to scoring, and I've even watched a lot of high school tape the last few weeks, just looking at recruits and stuff, and there's not a lot of defense in the paint. There's a lot of free balls getting by where people could have made a play on the ball, but I think they are so worried that they're going to foul out of the game that they just back off.
Yeah. So let's see here. Other games in the Elite Eight. Anything else that stood out to you about the Elite Eight?
Let's see. The Villanova trounced Texas Tech. That wasn't even a game either. Obviously, Kansas Duke. We talked about that. Those were probably the best two games of the tournament. And Kansas Duke may go down as the best game in the tournament, as you said before.
Well, and I told you it made me so nervous. Like, I was watching the game with Bree, and it went to overtime, and I was like, "Crap!" They had the ball in the right guy's hands, and it banged in the rim and right back out.
Yeah, that was so close.
Oh, that was it.
Sure that was a heartbreaking
here's the deal. I don't think Duke getting the Final Four would be great, but I don't know if Duke would have been able to beat Villanova. I mean, maybe we could have matched up to them, but Villanova is a punishing offense, and we had no defense. I still think Duke, even if we'd gotten to the Final Four, I think they would have lost to Villanova.
Yeah. To score 95 points on Kansas
in a college game, Randy, in a game where you're not trying to pour it on. You know what I mean? That's rough.
Oh man. This has been an incredible year for the tournament. Just looking at all the games as a whole, bracketologists are just blowing their minds thinking about all the upsets this year, and that we have a Villanova Michigan title championship game.
Yeah.
So I have to tell you this story because I was sitting in a bar in downtown Chapel Hill last week eating lunch, and bartenders talking to some guys there. It's the night after Kansas has beaten Duke. And, I hear kind of an older gentleman at the bar is talking, and he says, I picked two of the Final Four guys. So, yeah, I did pretty good. And I just kind of...
You picked two number ones.
You picked two number ones? You picked Villanova and Kansas, and you're bragging about that? Like...
Big man.
Give me a freaking break. I'm just chuckling to myself. Like, I wish I was sitting at the bar right now so I could just interject how much of a stupid opinion that is, that you guessed two number ones. Now, if you would have told me you guessed even Michigan and you got three of the four, or because nobody ever picked Loyola Chicago to make it to the Final Four, that was just impossible, then I would be impressed. But two number ones, I mean, come on. Come on, man. I thought that was funny. Anyways, let's move on.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about Capel?
I will, but I have to give you one little quick news flash. Villanova, in preparation for what may be a national title win, has already greased the poles in Philadelphia.
Oh, gosh.
All the light poles. Now, interesting for Philly, they did just win a Super Bowl. Can they handle winning a basketball championship as well?
Man, I didn't even think about that. Wow, I don't know. But how perfect of a story would it be for Michigan to upset them? And just that would be the coup de grace in this tournament, and this tournament as a whole, the year of the upsets.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Well, we'll see. All right. So, Jeff Capel, assistant coach at Duke for the last 7 years under Coach K, and also the top recruiter for their team, has been signed on to coach at Pitt in a move that surprised everyone. Because as we've talked before, Capel has kind of been the heir apparent there at Duke. At least a lot of people have talked about it. I've talked to you before how I think my money's still on Woj. seeing Woj come back. But now with Capel going out, if he can succeed at Pitt, then he'll still have a good case for in 5 years or 4 years, whenever K finally decides to retire, who will take over. But I do want to stress that Capel he's been the guy on the team who's gotten the one and dones. He's been able to recruit the one and dones. And in the last 5 years, Duke has had the number one class of recruits 4 out of those 5 years. I mean, just hands down, McDonald's All-Americans. It's going to be interesting how this, one, affects Duke's recruiting, and two, my question is, can he save Pitt?
I would like to answer your first question, and your first question being how it affects Duke, and I honestly don't think it will affect Duke at all. All Duke has to do is open those doors, and show Cameron Indoor Stadium and all the magnificent trophy rooms. I personally don't think players follow a specific coach. Especially someone who wasn't a head coach but now is. I think they follow the school. They want to be in the limelight. So gotcha. To answer your first question, I don't think it's like all of a sudden now he pulls all these people. Playing for Pitt and playing for Duke is two completely different things.
Well, let me tell you, I don't think he's going to steal away recruits from Duke, but you have to admit, all right, so I think players are a little more invested in the coach than the location, because look at the mess that UCLA is. Now, there's a school that has a tremendous pedigree, tons of hardware, amazing facilities, all the money in the world. It's based out of Los Angeles, and guys don't want to go there. These old titans of college basketball. Think about teams in the Big East that can't recruit. UConn can't recruit. I don't know. I have a feeling that a coach says a lot. Now, you made a good point that he was the assistant coach at Duke. So you're right. Duke, as long as K's at Duke, that will be the appeal. It's like, hey, do you want to work for the guy who won, however many gold medals, who's won these national championships, who basically can hold the ear of any referee in the league right now? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm think at this point, I think I could be the top recruiter for Duke.
And you don't like him.
Exactly. I mean, how hard could that gig be? But I mean, yeah, I'm not taking any credit away from him. He's put together an astounding class, and we'll talk about a couple more here coming up. But he's put together some astounding recruits and some great teams. But I do think he can make a big difference at Pitt. I had forgotten this, but and looking up research for the show, that he had been a head coach before at Oklahoma during the Blake Griffin days.
Yep, and VCU before that. He took VCU to their first tournament.
Yeah, and had a 1 or 2 30-win seasons at Oklahoma before he left. Yeah. So I love the competitiveness that he's staying right in the conference. I'm excited to see that. I think he'll be another great head coach, because when he's had to fill in for K, he's ran the team just fine. So, I think
he had a perfect record when K was out.
Yeah,
I think he had a 1,000 percentage. So.
I think so too. I do think he can take that program places. I think all the great players coming out of Pennsylvania, they're going to other schools.
They have to recruit. They have to recruit at home. Well, and look at what Villanova does. Villanova in Philadelphia is taking a lot of talent there. But it's not to say there's not plenty coming around Pitt. It's only good for the ACC to have a strong Pitt team, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, all right.
Did you catch any of the McDonald's All-American game?
Yeah, I watched the highlights, but for me, it's basically just watching my next Duke class.
Seriously. RJ Barrett looked phenomenal.
Oh, my God.
Zion Williamson gets a lot of the hype just because of his dunking ability, and he obviously won the dunk contest and looks incredible. But I'm telling you, watching RJ Barrett run around the court, I'm like, oh, my gosh, that kid's going to be a stud.
Yeah, no kidding.
Romeo Langford was another guy who is still unsigned. He looked awesome. And so did my boy Nasir Little, coming to Carolina, was the MVP of the game.
Yeah, man. It's going to be a good rivalry. It's going to be great.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Love
sir.
it.
I liked
Love
seeing
'em.
Nasir and Zion Williamson going at it one-on-one.
Yes, sir.
That was really awesome to know that there's going to be a future there for the rivalry.
Well, and I love guys that play together for the McDonald's All-American that that then have to play against each other in conference. You know what I mean? There's an extra edge to that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Tyus Jones talking about that a few years ago, but he's like, I knew these guys. Like we were all in the same recruiting class. We hung out, we practiced together, we played together, and then I have to play them 6 times, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Nasir Little and Zion Williamson are actually really good friends. So
doesn't surprise me. Well, I'll tell you what, man. Think about LeBron and the guys who he came in with his draft class, you know, his buddies. I mean, that's how the super team was formed. The only guy in that group that he loves that he hasn't gotten to play with is Carmelo and Chris Paul. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's those bonds, those relationships that you form early on, and it kind of holds on. It's like if you're playing with the guys essentially on the playground, that's, you know, their version of the playground of that level of basketball. You know, there's kind of a natural, I hate to use the term synergy because I hate synergy, but that's a good term for it. All right, we got a few more stories we got to knock out.
All right, LiAngelo Ball declared for the NFL draft.
Oh, God.
What are the odds that the Lakers will draft him?
No. Odds? I'd say you have a better chance of being struck by a thunderbolt while being bitten by a great white shark and, winning the lottery all at the same time. There's no way.
And Amy Winehouse coming back from the dead.
Oh, God. Ooh, don't put that voodoo out there, Randy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, apparently, LeVar Ball is holding the Lakers hostage, and if LiAngelo doesn't do this, then Lonzo's going elsewhere.
Bye-bye.
At least that's what he said.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, Felicia.
Yeah.
Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Bye.
Yeah, I don't think any team will pick him. I think he's destined to be a Lithuanian player the rest of his life.
Speaking of which, did you know Hansborough's playing in China right now?
He is.
Yeah. I had somebody
playing with Sheldon Williams. Sheldon's made a great career in China. I don't know if you knew that.
I did know that.
And his wife's a WNBA star.
Yeah, it's got, I guess it just comes down to, have all the common interests. I'll tell you what, Sheldon Williams always kind of, so even for a Duke guy, he always kind of creeped me out a little bit because his head looks like it's swollen. There's something about him that just kind of looks like, I don't know, man. It's got that cold-blooded killer look.
Yeah. Well, and what is it with what about these players that go? I mean, I guess there's nobody else playing ball in China, but our former college athletes, and they go over there and just kill the league, just putting up insane amount of numbers. I mean, all for him. I mean, obviously didn't do well enough to make it in the NBA, and part of it is, I mean, we talked about before, is the developmental leagues and the poor ability to keep talent in the league.
The NBDL is just abysmal. It's just abysmal. We had an NBDL team in Asheville, and it was hard to watch. Like, these are guys who they were missing layups, Randy.
Oh no!
And you're like, yeah, no wonder you're not in the big dance. What are you doing here?
Playing like the Generals at every game.
All right. Oh, golly Moses. All right, we got to get through a couple of these. All right.
Give us the rundown.
Women's NCAA final. All number ones make it to the final. Boring intensivize.
But I will say, you saw what happened, was it last night, the championship? They made up for it.
It was a close
game-winning shot.
And UConn lost in the first round of the Final Four. Shockingly.
Hells yeah, they got dropped.
Well, that's what happens when you never lose. You don't know what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, man. Watching women play basketball is scary. There's some women that you would not want to screw with.
No.
All right, next story. Las Vegas Golden Knights make the playoffs in their very first year in the league. This feat has not been done in the NHL since 1979 with the Whalers and the Oilers.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that's kind of, I mean, I know it's a rare hockey story on here, but I think that's kind of cool.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
The reason why I think it's the most fantastic because I didn't know that there was a team in Las Vegas now. So when I read Las Vegas Golden Knights on the show notes last week, I was like, Jesus Christ, are we talking about like a D-League team now or a minor league baseball? Actually, I was thinking minor league baseball. I'm like, who the hell are the Las Vegas Golden Knights?
You know what? But they could say in response, well, we made the playoffs, and that's a damn sight better than your Carolina Hurricanes.
So are they just fill me in? Are they a franchise that has moved or an expansion?
They're an expansion. They were an expansion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And they made the playoffs in their first year.
Wow. And you think about who you're recruiting as an expansion team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Scrubs.
Like that's really impressive. I have an article in here about crazy MLB foods coming out this season, but this episode's long. Go check it out. We'll post it in the show link. There's just some really crazy stuff. There's one I will mention here. I think it's
a hot dog.
There's one in Texas where they have cored out the middle of a pickle. They put a hot dog in the middle of the pickle. They batter it and fry it like a corn dog.
Wow.
So it's a hot dog wrapped in a dill pickle, deep fat fried.
A dill dog.
A dill dog. Oh, man. I could go down on that dill dog. Just gobble it up. Gobble it up.
Nothing could please your woman better than a dill dog from our ballpark.
That's right.
I saw just the tangent on that story, or to tag along on that story, that the Yankees are actually putting art in their beer foam now. I didn't know if you saw that.
No,
you have to look that up. They did Aaron Judge's face in the pint of beer.
When people think that the Yankees are a bunch of pretentious pricks with too much money, stuff like that doesn't help. Stuff like that doesn't help.
Exactly what I thought. Fucking beer foam, like it's an espresso art. Come on.
Here's an unpopular thing, Randy. I'm a Yankees fan. I'm gonna air that out. We'll just let that stew for a minute. I was raised a Yankees fan.
Young. So I'm sure you were excited to see Giancarlo Stanton's first hit as a Yankee.
Hell yeah! Are you kidding me?
Freaking jacked it.
Yard.
I am not a Yankees fan, but I am a huge Giancarlo Stanton fan because of his early days in Greensboro. So he is a beast. And I think that's a huge pickup by the Yankees.
With him and Aaron Judge, man. Look. Man.
They're going to be jacking homers left and right.
They got close to the home run record for a team last year without Stanton.
Yeah. And now with Stanton. Yep. He's so exciting to watch, and Aaron Judge being, just an awesome talent. I mean, these guys are just rare anomalies. They don't come around often. They're game changers. These two guys are what I think of as like Sosa, McGuire, Ken Griffey Jr. of us growing up.
Same team.
Yeah.
God almighty, they're on the same.
Talk about a super team, man.
All right. I see you got a note in here about Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Yeah. So he hit a walk-off homer to end the spring training. He was called up, I believe, to the Blue Jays. I think he's playing for Toronto. He hit for 323 last season in the minors. So I thought it was very cool to see he's following in his dad's footsteps. And is quite a powerful hitter too. So we'll see what he does this year. I'm actually kind of excited for baseball this year. Admittedly, I haven't watched many games the past few years since I've been watching a lot of football. But opening day, I did watch a few games. The first hit of the Cubs game was a freaking home run.
Yeah.
The very first pitch. It was awesome.
When baseball's good, it's great. When it's bad, it's abysmally boring.
Yeah. Gosh, when you're 90, 100 games in, it's just like, the season is so long.
It's crazy long. 162 games in a season times 30 teams.
It's ridiculously long. The worst thing I ever did, and I know we need to wrap this up, was play fantasy baseball about 10 years ago.
Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you do that? You have to do that every day, every single day.
Every day you're changing pitchers, you're changing lineups. It got way overwhelming. I did one season, and one season was enough.
I could see you 3 months into the season like, what? Oh, where did I go? Now he's got Tommy John surgery. I don't even know.
I would put somebody starting in and, not check it until 3 days later. And
he got bucked down to AA.
Yeah, he got an injury. This guy didn't start. And, Hanley Ramirez decided to sit this one out. They got rest. You got pitchers in and out. Oh, my God. How do people keep up with fantasy baseball?
I mean, Yahoo Fantasy may make it easier just from giving you updates and stuff. But I feel like your phone would be pinged all the time.
Oh, man.
All right. We got to close this sucker out with the who you got.
Who you got? Who you got,
All
bro?
right, I'll let you.
Oh yeah. Well,
Who you got, brother?
let me tell you something, brother. I got that over my brother from another mother.
All right, who you got? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call?
I'll
let you pick. I'll let you pick.
It's the year of the upsets, baby. I'm going Michigan all the way.
Oh man, buddy, why? Oh, I even gave you the option to choose first, so I'd have to pick the opposite. I mean, my money's on Villanova. I would put money on Villanova.
I would too. I don't think they stand a snowball's chance in hell against Villanova, but especially after they rain threes. But I will say their shot could be off tonight. Michigan could dominate that paint.
They could go cold.
So we're 6 minutes from tip-off. So I think we did this podcast justice by getting our predictions in.
All right, I'm going to get through a little bit of this advertising, everybody. If you want to check us out on Twitter, find us at CriscoCast. You can also check out our Facebook, Crisco Industries. We don't do much on there, but if you engage with us there, we're more likely to do it there. If you're listening to the podcast and not watching us on YouTube, check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Crisco Brand Biscuits. I promise you don't have to see our faces. If you enjoy the show and want to see it grow, please consider donating to Patreon at patreon.com/Crisco Industries. There's a whole bunch of extra cool, fun stuff that happens when you donate. You get extra content. You get access to other stuff that we're doing behind the scenes. You get to talk to us directly, that sort of thing. But in the event that you can't do that, just the best thing you can do for the show is to share it with your friends. And please rate the show on iTunes and Google Play. Also, you can find us on Pocket Casts. So really, you have no excuse for not finding some venue to listen to the show.
That's right. Also, we're contractually obligated to thank Dave Grohl.
Praise be unto thee. All right. I think that has been another wonderful waste of time. So, for Randy, woo! Man, I tell you what, you got that nature, boy. Woo!
Oh my God, King.
We're going to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Weehawken, New Jersey, and Greensboro, North Carolina. Woo! All right. For Randy Watkins, I'm Robert Joins. This has been the R&R podcast, and we will see y'all next week.